We have a lot to unpack tonight. So if you clicked on this video, obviously you already know what we're going to be talking about, but if you just randomly clicked on it, you didn't even see what the thumbnail was or the title, we are going to do my college football power ranking. So let me explain how this works for a second. I'm not doing the whole thing where it's like, so I actually have a bone to pick with the AP poll and how that works, but we can save that for when the season starts. My rankings are going to be based on how I think this team will perform this year and how good the team is. So after week 1, week 2, these rankings could change completely. They could be completely different. They could be the complete opposites of what it is right now. But I have 20 teams. I'm not missing 25 because I really think you only need 20. I think the other 5 are kind of just hand-me-outs. So I don't think we need any handouts in these rankings. So we're just going to do top 20. We have a lot to go through. Obviously, there's 20 teams in this. So let's just get right into it, okay? Throughout the season, we'll update this, and I'll give my new rankings. Probably do it once a week. See how they change throughout the season. I think the top teams, there's a couple of them that might be in the top for a pretty good amount of the season. So let's just get right in. We have a lot. At the top, let's just go. So starting at number 20, honestly, they're in this because I think they're okay. I mean, I don't really have a lot to say about them, honestly. Number 20 would be BYU. You'll see on the screen 5 teams at a time. I'll reveal the next 5 in four different groups. So you have the first 5. We have BYU at number 20. I just think it's kind of a handout for BYU. I don't really have anything to say with them. I think they're in the Big 12. They didn't do great last year. They did good for the Big 12, but it's not a lot to say. I think that pretty quickly BYU could get passed just by other Big 12 teams like Houston, but Houston hasn't proved it yet. So because of that and because of how BYU did last year, they're at number 20. Moving right along, 19, we have Florida. Now, Florida Gators, obviously last season, they went 4-8. Don't forget, they did beat Texas, which really kind of sold the entire season for Texas. If they won that game, they're probably in the college football playoffs, but it's a tale for a different story. Tale for a different time, maybe. Florida wasn't terrible last season. Now their record obviously showed that they were pretty bad, but I mean, they weren't a terrible team. They had good talent. They had Jaden Baugh, who is returning at their running back position. He had over 1,100 yards last season rushing. So good at running back. The receiving room is pretty much, they retained most of their receivers from last season, which is going to be pretty good for Florida, especially with John Summerall coming in at head coach. Don't know if we mentioned that yet. Obviously, John Summerall coached Tulane last season, took them to the playoffs. He was actually the coach of Tulane and Florida at the same time, coaching 2 different teams. But I think John Summerall could be the guy for Florida. Now, I've been listening to pretty much any interview that has him in it. I've been researching Florida, and I want to like Florida a lot. I want them to be good this season. I think college football is good when Florida is good. So, obviously, John Summerall has big shoes to fill. He has Urban Meyer ahead of him, Steve Spurrier, some of the best college football coaches of all time. And as a matter of fact, he's actually, according to his press conferences and interviews he's been doing everywhere, he says he's been in contact with them, getting advice. He's been getting coached up by former coaches. So I think John Summerall is doing it in the right way. Now, question marks for Florida. There's a couple. Really just being one, but it's between 2 things, and that's between their 2 quarterbacks that they have. Obviously, there's more. They haven't confirmed it's between 2, but John Summerall has been kind of hinting around that there's really just 2 guys, and that is Aaron Williams and Tramel Jones. Honestly, I don't know much about these guys. They're all new for John Summerall, so he's coming in with new people. He doesn't really know any of these players. And John Summerall, obviously, famously, Tulane, had Darian Minsa a couple years ago. Now he's at Miami after being at Duke, and he's a Heisman contender. So John Summerall has coached good quarterbacks before, and he actually said in an interview on Wake Up Barstool that he didn't even know Darian Minsa would be the starter until after fall camp. So couple of weeks, we might have a starter named at Florida. I mean, Gainesville might be having a starter named in a couple of weeks. But as of right now, it's between Tramel Jones and Aaron Williams. So that's the biggest question mark. They have receivers they can play with. They have a solid O-line. They have, obviously, Jaden Baugh, one of the top 7, top 5 running backs in college football. So they have the people, but let's just see what they do at quarterback. So until then, we don't know for sure. That's why they're at number 19. But I think Florida could be good this season. So moving on, 18, we have Clemson. Now, obviously, if you watched the video from last week, I went through the ACC. Clemson, I think they'll probably finish 3rd in the ACC this season. I think Dabo, obviously, I think Dabo can't be fired from Clemson. I think he has a permanent job there if he wants it. I think if he ever did leave, it would probably be a mutual parting ways kind of thing. But I think Dabo is fully ready to, I don't want to say try again, but he just hasn't really tapped into the transfer portal like you need to be competitive in college football. Obviously, some coaches that don't like the transfer portal, don't want to mess with all this NIL, transfer stuff, they just stop. For example, Nick Saban. Nick Saban stopped at the top of his game, debatably top of his game. Obviously, he probably could have kept coaching for 10 more years and been solid, but he stopped because he didn't want to mess with the NIL, didn't want to mess with the transfer portal, and that's understandable. Why would you want to do that if you're not going to fully tap into that how you know you should and how you should to be competitive? There's no point to keep doing it. So Nick Saban tapped out. Dabo didn't. And Dabo now this season, he's obviously not going Lane Kiffin level transfer portal and going and kicking every single player that he wants, but he tapped in enough where I think Clemson could be more back than they were last year. Obviously, they had a pretty terrible season last season as far as Clemson standards go, but I think with Christopher Vizina is their quarterback, I think he should be pretty good. He's been there for his entire career, so we'll see how he does. But number 18, we have Clemson. So moving on to 17, we have Penn State. Now, Penn State, they did fire James Franklin. Their season was kind of a mess last season, but it wasn't horrible. Like, as far as behind the scenes and the coaching carousel that was going on through the whole country and the AD trying to find, like, all the behind the scenes stuff of Penn State last season wasn't great. But their season honestly wasn't that bad. Now, obviously they brought in Matt Campbell, new head coach, comes from Iowa State, maybe the best Iowa State head coach of all time. That's not saying a lot, but they brought in him. And let's just look at Iowa State from last season. Iowa State, they finished 7th in the Big 12. To start the season, Iowa State was 5-0. So they were on a hot start. After that 5-0 start, Iowa State then went on to lose the next 4 games, putting them at 5-4. Then the week after that, they somehow inched their way past TCU. They won by, I think it was 20-17, so barely a win. And then they went on to lose pretty much their head coach and most of their players. Not most, but Matt Campbell did bring 24 players from Iowa State over to Penn State. So, obviously Iowa State wasn't great, but also you can't go win 5 games and then lose the next 4 straight. You just can't do that and be a successful coach. It's just not a great thing to happen. You can't let that happen and be a successful coach. So obviously they did lose to BYU, who was pretty solid last season, but then they lost to random teams that they should not have lost to in the Big 12. So we'll see how they do. They brought, like I said, 24 of the Iowa State guys came over with him to Penn State. Notable ones being Rocco Beck and some D-line, O-line. We'll see. I think Penn State, obviously, with James Franklin pre-last season, was one of the most consistent Big Ten teams. James Franklin has one of the best college football records in the past, this decade probably. So we'll see how they do. I don't think they're going to be phenomenal. They do have maybe the easiest Power 4 schedule this season. So that is good for them, but I think they'll probably fumble games that they shouldn't, just like Matt Campbell managed to do at Iowa State. So we'll see what happens, but yeah, that's why they're at 17. So 15, not going to talk a lot about because I was glazing them last week. SMU, I'm super high on. I don't have to say much. I love Kevin Jennings. I think their quarterback, great. Offense, they retained or improved at most positions on offense, especially in the skill positions. So I think they're going to be good. They beat Miami last season at home. So, there's a lot of things I just like about SMU. So I think they're going to be great. And for that reason, they're at 16. So that's the first 5. What do you guys think? I mean, if you don't agree, you can argue with the wall. I don't really care. But we'll go on to the next 5. Here they are on the screen right now, starting with Texas Tech. Brendan Sorsby, obviously, maybe the biggest news that we've had this offseason. It was a pretty big scandal. If you call it a scandal, I don't really know. It was just a big deal. Obviously, his betting problems that he had, his sports gambling on teams he was on, when he was at Indiana, when he was at Cincinnati. I mean, obviously, it was just a big deal. And they lost their quarterback, who was the number 1 paid quarterback from the portal. He was the number 1 portal quarterback. A lot of stuff going on. And obviously, he's not playing at Texas Tech anymore. So, pretty big deal for Texas Tech. A lot of people think they can't be competitive now because of that, which I don't know why you would think that, considering last season the quarterback situation wasn't good either, and they went on to go to the college football playoff. So, I mean, they lost Sorsby, but I think their defense is still going to be good. Obviously, they're not going to have a bad defense at Texas Tech, especially with the type of team they have now and the type of play style that they have. But obviously, quarterback is a problem, especially considering the incident with Oregon last season, going 23-0 in the playoffs. Not a good look. Not great for their offense. Obviously, Brendan Sorsby was going to be able to help that. Now he can't. So, obviously, they're not going to be great. They probably will be the same, maybe worse, maybe a tad better. Tad worse, tad better from last season. I don't think there's going to be a huge drop-off or a huge improvement. I think it'll just be either a little bit worse, a little bit better. I mean, I pretty much think they'll be the same as last season. They could win the Big 12, could make the playoffs, but if that happens, they'll probably just get ran like they did last season. So that's all I have to say about Texas Tech. Not super high on them, but because the Big 12 is pretty weak, they could go on and win that, make the playoffs. So that's why they're at 15. Moving right on to another team in Texas, we have Texas A&M. Now, Texas A&M, Mike Elko, good head coach. I don't know how he was at Duke for so long and didn't get taken by a different team, but he didn't, and now he's at Texas A&M, where he's putting together some good teams. Now, here's what I have to say about Texas A&M. They obviously went 11-1 last season in the regular season, and I mean let's just rewind. 11-1 in the SEC is very, very impressive. Now, at least people were hating on them. People were saying that they shouldn't have made the playoffs. They should have lost more games, but they were in the SEC and they went 11-1. If Texas A&M goes 11-1 in the SEC, they have one of the hardest schedules in college football, right? Well, actually, no, they didn't last season. They actually had one of the easiest schedules. Well, you could say that at least they won their hard games, right? They went 11-1. At least they won their hard games. Well, they actually didn't win their hardest games. They beat Notre Dame in Indiana, in South Bend, but they won by 1 point. And it was a pretty high-scoring game, and they're supposed to have a pretty good defense. So what was going on there? Well, at least when they played their second hardest game of the season, that to date, when they played South Carolina, at least they beat them pretty handily, right? Well, they were actually getting destroyed at halftime. Okay, well, at least they destroyed Texas, right? Texas season was pretty much over at that point. At least they beat Tech. Well, no, they actually lost to Texas too, and it was not very competitive going into the third and fourth quarter. Well, at least when they made the playoffs, they had at least a good run, right? They went pretty deep in the playoffs. They had a good showing in the first round. No, they actually got destroyed by Miami. They lost 10-3 against Miami in the first round. Texas A&M, they played 3 or 4 good teams last season. They struggled against all. They might have won some. They beat South Carolina, barely. They beat Notre Dame, barely. They were struggling against every good team. Now, am I saying Texas A&M's bad? No. Marcel Reed is a decent quarterback. I don't think he's great. I mean, I think he's an insanely good scrambling quarterback. He can run for sure. He can get it out of the pocket and escape from D linemen coming at him. But I just don't think he's that good of a quarterback. I don't think he can lead a team when the pressure's on. Obviously, they made that comeback against South Carolina, and he played phenomenal in the second half. But you can't do that every week against teams like South Carolina. When they're thinking about firing Shane Beamer at the end of the season. Obviously, they didn't end up doing that. But I'm just saying, Texas A&M was not as impressive as people think they were last season. You can't do that against the only good teams and look bad. It's like Notre Dame last season. the good teams that they played, like Miami, and then when they play bad, like good teams, when you play not very many good teams, you have to win those games. Otherwise, there's no reason you would ever make the playoffs. So we'll see what happens to A&M. They have a harder schedule this year for sure. I think they played Georgia, Oklahoma, obviously Texas. We'll see what happens, but not super high on A&M, so they're at 14. Going into number 13, is this our first? Yeah, this is our first Big Ten team on the ranking so far. We have the University of Southern California. So I think USC is trending up. Now, it's not great timing considering if Lincoln Riley doesn't make the playoffs this year, I think he could. Well, he's already on the warm seat. I wouldn't say hot seat yet. I wouldn't label it fully hot seat, but I do think there's a chance if he doesn't make the playoffs, he could be fired. Now, I've been saying this all offseason. He's talking with so much confidence, with so much he seems so relaxed at media days that I'm thinking he's not on the hot seat yet. But I think if he doesn't make the playoffs this year, it could be getting pretty toasty in Southern California for Lincoln Riley. I think that he's made some good hires. Obviously, new strength and conditioning coach, new defensive coordinator that he says the defense is looking pretty good this year, according to Lincoln Riley. They're obviously good at quarterback, Jade Mayava. They have good running backs. Their O-line's decent. Honestly, my biggest question mark with USC this year is the receivers, but we'll see what happens. Obviously, they lost Mekhi Lemon. Talked about this a little bit, but we'll see what happens in Southern California. Obviously, they're playing some pretty good teams. I think they play Indiana, Michigan, Oregon. I think they play Ohio State too. Anyways, they play some good teams. So they're going to have to win some big games. They can't just lose one good game to Oregon and just win out the rest to make it. They have good games the whole season. It's not like Penn State schedule. They have a good Big Ten schedule. So they're going to have to win some big games this year. And if they don't, they're not going to make the playoffs. They need to win the games they need to win to make the playoffs. They can't fumble the games that are easy either. They need to win the pretty simple Big Ten wins, if you know what I'm saying, the Rutgers and the Purdue's. They need to win those games. So we'll see what happens. Lincoln Riley, obviously, historically can't put together a good defense, but we'll see what happens this season. So going on to 12, we have Alabama. Alabama is going to be Alabama. They're going to bring in the talent. They're going to bring in the right rosters every season. The thing about Alabama now is, can Kalen DeBoer coach in the games that Alabama historically would just roll through? Now, Nick Saban would take Eastern Tennessee State College, and he would treat that like the SEC championship every bad game. Nick Saban would treat as the SEC championship. Kalen DeBoer, he's shown that that's not what he does. Florida State, not even an Eastern Tennessee State College type of team. Power 4 team, historically good team. They lost that week 1 last season, when obviously that ended up being a not very good Florida State team either. We were pretty high after they beat Alabama, thinking Florida State's back. Obviously, that was not the case. Can Kalen DeBoer coach in the games that should just be taken care of by an Alabama team? We'll see. That's the only thing that holds me back from Alabama is, can they take care of those games? Obviously, they lost in the second round of the playoffs to the national champions, so obviously they're good. But last season they also had a good quarterback, and this season they don't even have a starter named yet. So we'll see what happens. It's pretty obvious that it's going to be Keelan Russell, but they still officially haven't named a starter, so we'll see. Maybe before or after fall camp. I would probably say after for sure they will have one named. It'll most likely be Keelan Russell. Look at his Heisman odds in Las Vegas. They have him pretty high to win Heisman, which is pretty strange considering he's not even named the starter. But we'll see what happens. So number 12 is Alabama. Number 11, we have Ole Miss. Now we're starting to get into the really good teams in college football. We're starting to get into the playoff teams. Ole Miss has Trinidad Chambliss, debatably the number 1 quarterback in college football. As far as ability goes, he might be number 1. As far as he might not be drafted number 1 next year, but he's pretty good. Now, he does have some of the most experience out of any quarterback, considering he's been in college football for 19 years now. But the Trinidad Chambliss and Kewan Lacey duo is one of the best, maybe I don't want to go out and just say this because I haven't put a lot of thought into it, but I might go out on a limb and say that is the best quarterback running back duo in college football. Now I might have to start like backstepping on that, but right now I'm going to go out and say that. Ole Miss has the number one quarterback running back duo in college football. So we'll see how they do this year. Now, Pete Golding, head coach, we all know how this went down. Lane Kiffin's gone middle of the season, right before they go to the playoffs. They just hired the DC as the head coach. I'm not a huge fan of that historically. I don't really love it when the DC just gets upgraded to the head coach position. Some teams it works for. Obviously, Marcus Freeman, when Brian Kelly left, he just went from DC to head coach. So it works for sure for some teams. But Pete Golding's been at Bama, LSU, obviously. Like, why did he never get a head coach look before? That's the only question mark that I have for things like this. Like, now when Mike Leach dies and Mississippi State just upgrades their DC, that makes sense why they would do that. It would be hard to go on a huge coach search after your head coach dies. But obviously that didn't work out for him either. So we'll see. I'm not a huge fan of it. It seems like it's just lazy by the AD. But if he actually trusts Pete Golding, I just can't see Pete Golding being a head coach that coaches in big games. I think when he gets under the lights, he's going to get flustered. I think now, obviously we'll see when he coaches against Lane Kiffin in, week 4? I think it's September 19th they play. So we'll see. LSU Ole Miss, that's probably his biggest game into the season, or the first big game he has this season. So we'll see how he does, but I'm just not huge on Pete Golding as head coach at Ole Miss. So obviously they have the talent. Like I said, number one RB, QB duo, but that's all I got to say about Ole Miss. So that's it for the top 20 to 11. So here we go. We're getting into the top 10. Okay, now, like I said, these lists could change. Week 1, I could go in and change every single team on this. It might be completely different, but these top 10 teams are probably going to be on this list for a pretty good amount of the season. If they drop out, it's going to have to be something crazy like last year when everybody had Clemson and LSU high, and obviously that didn't end up very well. So we'll see what happens, but I have pretty good faith in most of these teams since they are in my top 10. Now, getting into it, at number 10, we have the University of Michigan. Now, obviously, Michigan honestly ended their season pretty good last season. They were on the edge of making the playoffs. They needed one more win probably to make the playoffs last season, and they were close. Obviously, they fired Tyrone Moore. He did some bad things that needed to get him out of there. And in my opinion, they brought in maybe the most perfect Michigan head coach hire of all time. Obviously, Jim Harbaugh is one of the best Michigan coaches, probably, like, as far as his play style goes and his coaching style, great Michigan coach. Won the Natty, debatably cheated, but that's neither here nor there. I think Kyle Whittingham is probably the perfect hire they could have made. Now, I think he's going to bring the right style of play, right style of defense back to Michigan. I think Bryce Underwood is going to flourish in Kyle Whittingham's team and under him as head coach. I think everything's looking up for Michigan. After, like I said, if these teams move around on this list, I think Michigan could move up pretty quick considering they play Oklahoma week 2. So if they get a good win week 2, Michigan might be a top 5 team. We'll see what happens. I have a lot of faith in Michigan. I think they could probably make the playoffs this season. I think they'll do pretty good in the Big Ten. I think they'll probably beat Indiana. I think that could be not a trap game because Michigan's obviously a good team. They'll probably be good going into their game against Indiana, but I think they'll probably pull off the win versus Indiana. I think it's in Bloomington too, so it could be a big game. Number 9, the University of Georgia. Georgia's good. They're never going to be bad under Kirby Smart. He's a good head coach, good recruiter, good in the transfer portal. I'm just not a huge Gunnar Stockton fan. I think their quarterback kind of holds them back. Obviously they lost Zachariah Branch. I have been wrong about the quarterback situation in Georgia before. I thought Stetson Bennett was trash. Still do, honestly. Obviously didn't pan out in the NFL. Where was he? Is he still in the Rams? I don't even know. He was a practice player for a long time. So I don't even know if he's in the NFL anymore. He wasn't good at Georgia, in my opinion, but they won a national championship multiple times. So Obviously, they don't need a superb quarterback to win a natty or even do good. I also think Carson Beck's not that good. I didn't think he was that good at Miami either. I think he's kind of just, as long as you can do the bare minimum as a quarterback and you're at Georgia, I think you're a good quarterback for them. So I don't think Gunnar Stockton has to be that good, which is perfect because I don't think he is. So we'll see how Georgia does. I don't think they can be bad with Kirby Smart as head coach. So we'll see what happens. But moving on to number 8, we have the University of Texas. Now, I think I probably will get some backlash for having Texas at 8. A lot of people have them in the top 5. The thing about Texas is I think they have the talent, they have the roster. Obviously, they have the receivers, the ones that they retained last season and the ones they brought in the portal. Cam Coleman obviously being the biggest star in that receiving room. The O-line, they've developed them. They've been there for a while, most of them, or they brought in good ones. The O-line's going to be solid, way better than it was last year, which isn't saying a lot because they were terrible last year. Arch Manning, this is his season. That's probably the biggest question mark on their offense is how's Arch Manning going to do? They have a good running back room. It really just revolves around Arch. Is he going to have the season that everybody's been expecting for the past 8 years of him being in the news and being in the college football landscape, or is he going to not pan out like everybody thought he would? Is he going to end up being kind of a bust and probably not get drafted, probably end up just being over, and then next time Peyton's son comes up, that's the next Manning everybody's going to talk about what Arch could have been. I don't know. We'll see. Obviously, against Michigan in Texas's bowl game, Arch Manning had the game of his life. So if we're going off recency bias in the last game he's played, Arch Manning's going to win the Heisman this year. And that's what Las Vegas thinks. Arch Manning has one of the best odds to win Heisman. So we'll see what happens. Texas last year, like I said earlier, they lost to Florida, cost them the college football playoffs. Things happen when you can't take care of easy games. That should be easy, at least. Florida was a not good team last year. They won, what did I say earlier, 4-8? You have to win that game. So Texas, if they can close out on the games they need to, should be good. Should have a great season. We'll see what happens. I think they'll probably lose to Oklahoma in the Red River. We'll see about Ohio State week 2. I don't know. There's a lot of question marks. I don't know. Ohio State, Texas last year was an abysmal game to watch. One of the most boring games of all time. Was it competitive? Yeah, but it was competitive because it was like 3-3 the whole game. It was not an enjoyable game to watch as a college football fan, but we'll see what happens. So going on to number 7, Texas's rival just north of them, the Oklahoma Sooners. A lot of people, here's what I'll say about Oklahoma. Obviously last season, Oklahoma's defense, amazing. One of the best defensive units in college football, definitely top 5, maybe top 3. They are probably going to be as good, if not better, on defense this season as they were last season. So as far as the defensive front goes, Oklahoma's great. Brent Venables is calling the plays. He's the DC and the head coach. So with Brent Venables as the defensive coordinator, you're never going to have a bad defensive unit. You never know he's going to throw at you. It's insane. So as far as the defense goes for Oklahoma, they're set. Last year, Oklahoma's offense was terrible. It was not good. Now, through week 4, John Mateer at quarterback at Oklahoma leading the Heisman running. He was number 1 Heisman watch. Great. Oklahoma's offense, moving the chains, scoring touchdowns, going crazy. Then John Mateer breaks hand. Not only does he break his hand, he breaks his throwing hand. If you don't know a lot about being a quarterback, having your throwing hand kind of crucial to leading a team, especially leading a team to the playoffs. But guess what Oklahoma did? They actually made the playoffs with their quarterback breaking his throwing hand in week 4 against Auburn. Oklahoma's defense, if they are as good as they were last year, which I think they could be, maybe better, their offense has to improve a tiny bit to just make the playoffs again. Now, their schedule, in my opinion, is easier than it was last year. I think Michigan's better than they were last year, so that makes it harder. They played Georgia. They play A&M. They play Florida at home, which could be a hard game. But Oklahoma, they also didn't have a run game last season. Now, they made some new hires. They brought a new running backs coach. The running backs were good last season. They were just injury prone the whole time. And as if you know football at all, you know when your running game opens up, it opens up your passing game as well. So we'll see what happens. They brought in some transfers at receiver, one of them being a Texas receiver, Parker Livingston. They brought in Virginia receivers. I think Oklahoma's offense is going to be better than it was last year. So at the end of the day, Oklahoma, in my opinion, will probably be a college football playoff team, maybe an SEC championship team, maybe not win it, but could make it. We'll see what happens. So going on to number 6, this one also could be higher. Some people probably do have them higher. I know people do. I have number 6 being Ohio State. Now, Ohio State, again, like I said about Alabama and Georgia, they're never going to be bad. I think Ohio State, obviously, they're being led by Jeremiah Smith, debatably the number 1 college football player this season. He's probably the number 1 going into the season. We'll see what happens at the end of the season this year. But they are also pairing Jeremiah Smith with Heisman finalist last year, Julian Sand. He went to New York. He went to the ceremony. Didn't win it, obviously. But when you pair up a Heisman finalist with one of the best, if not the best player in college football, your offense is going to be good. Obviously, they have Bo Jackson at running back. Ohio State's offense, in my opinion, is set. Their defense last season was one of the best in college football, definitely top 5. They lost a lot of their guys, Caleb Downs being the leader of that defense probably. It's hard when you have one of the best defenses to stay the same. It's hard to not regress at your defensive line, defensive tackles, defensive backs. It's hard to not lose your skill and your ability. And it's hard to keep the same level of defensive play that you had the season before. I think it's going to be hard for Ohio State to do that. I think their defense will get a little bit worse, not because they're bad, but because it's hard to just match a team and a defense that's insanely good. So I think their offense is going to be good this season. I think their defense is going to be good, just not as good as it was last year. So I have them at number 6. Let's move on to the top 5. So before we get into the top 5, I think 3 or 4 of these teams in the top 5 will probably be in the top 5 for the majority of the season. I think they're all really good. I think a lot of them could go undefeated for most of the regular season, if not all of it. Also, most of these teams not most. 2, you'll just see. It's hard to explain without telling you what the teams are. So let's just get into it. Number 5, LSU. LSU, one of the biggest teams in the news this season because of Lane Kiffin going there halfway through. LSU fired Brian Kelly last year in the middle of the season. I honestly don't think they were that bad enough for them to fire him. LSU expects excellence like Alabama and Oklahoma and Texas, but they weren't even as terrible as people make them think. Now, they went 7-5 in the regular season, which is not amazing. They made a bowl game, but out of those 5 losses that they had, 4 of the teams that they lost to were college football playoff teams. I think it was, Texas A&M, Texas, Oklahoma, and Alabama. Maybe, I don't think they played Texas, but, Ole Miss. They played Ole Miss. So they lost to 4 college football playoff teams, and they also lost to Vanderbilt, who was on the fringe for the playoffs, but still, they lost to solid teams last year. And then they brought in Lane Kiffin during the season. Lane Kiffin, arguably one of the best coaches in the transfer portal to date. I mean, transfer portal hasn't been very prevalent in college football as much as it has recently, but Lane Kiffin is one of, if not the best coach for the transfer portal of all time. And he brought in 40 players to LSU this year, some famously being Colorado's tackle. He brought in some D linemen. He brought in, obviously, Sam Levitt at quarterback. They're going to be good. LSU is going to be good. Any team Lane Kiffin's putting together is going to be good. At Ole Miss, he brought in great teams. Obviously, Trinidad Chambliss, he brought in good players. Austin Simmons, quarterback, who's now at Missouri, good. He brings in good players, and he develops them well. And he can identify who needs to be on the field at certain times. He's just a good coach. He's never going to put together a bad team. So I think he's going to be great this season. He obviously has more resources, in his words, and more ability to do more at LSU is what he says. So we'll see what happens. I'm pretty high on LSU. I think there's a good chance they go undefeated in the regular season. They could drop one game. This is another one of those teams that I think we could see make the SEC championship. Maybe they'll be against Oklahoma. I don't know. But, yeah, we'll see. I think they're going to be great. I could see them, like I said, if they go undefeated, they'll stay in the top 5 on my rankings the entire season. No SEC teams going undefeated and not being in my top 5. So, moving on, we have number 4, Indiana. Now, Curt Cignetti, he talks with so much confidence. He makes me think, like, sometimes I'm thinking, did they already win the Natty this year? Like, when you get married and you already go to the courthouse, you get your weddings, like your document signed and your wedding marriage license. You have that signed before you get your wedding. Actually, like before the ceremony happens, you already had the document signed. That's what Curt Cignetti's talking like at Indiana. It's like this season, just the ceremony. Like they already won, but he's just walking through the motions now. That's what he's talking about. That's how he's talking in every interview. When he's on Pardon My Take and he's on Big Ten Media Days, he's talking like Indiana already won the Natty. And he's almost convinced me. They brought in Josh Hoover from TCU, who could be a good quarterback. I'm not for sure. In the Big 12, he was all right. Nick Marsh from Michigan State, one of the best receivers we'll see this season probably. I mean, their O-line, maybe the best O-line unit in college football. I think Indiana's going to be good. I had them at 4, but we'll see what happens. Going on to number 3, Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame's going to be really good. I think Marcus Freeman is a great head coach. Obviously, he was trying to get pulled to the NFL in the offseason. Notre Dame's biggest issue is that they don't play any good teams. So what does that mean? What does that look like? It looks like if you lose the game to the good team you're playing, a.k.a. Miami, BYU, maybe SMU, it means if you lose those, you're out of the playoffs automatically. If you lose one of those, if you lose to Miami, you're out of the playoffs automatically. Notre Dame last season, it was a great game to watch against Miami. There were some great catches. Carson Beck had some crazy good receivers on his team. Not great throws, but good receivers that could make good plays, and they ended up beating Notre Dame. Now, I could see Notre Dame going undefeated for the first half of the season, maybe making it to number 1 on my list. If they're blowing out teams left and right, it's going to be hard not to put them at number 1. Their defense is playing great, holding teams to low-scoring games for them scoring a lot with C.J. Carr. Notre Dame could be number 1 for a long time. But then when they get to like week 5, I think, against BYU, if they're not week 6 maybe, if they're not 5-0 going into BYU, it's not looking good for Notre Dame. Then fast forward, if they're not, 9-0 going into Miami, also could be bad for Notre Dame. And then just a couple weeks after that, if they're like, let's say they're 7-2 going into SMU, season might be over as far as college football playoffs go for Notre Dame, but we'll see what happens. I'm just saying, if the thing with them is they cannot afford to lose the games like BYU, like Miami, like maybe SMU, if they're as good as I think they will be. We'll see what happens with Notre Dame. But I think they have good talent. I think they have the right players, the right coaches. But yeah, we'll see what happens with Notre Dame. Number 2, Miami. Now, Miami obviously lost in the national championship last season. They brought in Darian Mintz at quarterback, replacing Carson Beck, who I think is maybe the biggest upgrade known to man. Obviously, I don't hate him. I just don't think he's a good quarterback. Carson Beck I think he's just okay. And I think Darian Mintz is really good. If I had to pick a Heisman right now, Darian Mintz would definitely be in my top 2, and probably not 2. So we'll see what happens. They brought in also Darian Mintz's receiver from Duke. His name's Cooper Barquette. They both are from Duke together, former teammates at Duke, and they both also won the ACC championship together last season. Pairing that up with Malachi Toney, maybe the best freshman receiver we've seen in a pretty good amount of time, I think they're going to be really good on offense. Now, the biggest question marks most people have for Miami is their D-line. It was insanely good last season, Ruben Bain being the leader on that D-line. According to Miami's staff and according to what the coaches have been saying, is they're going to replace that by having a D-line committee. So we'll see what happens. They have a redshirt freshman that they have coming back, obviously, and we'll see how he does. He was the number 1 ranked player Miami had in their class of 25 recruiting class. They also have a transfer from Missouri, I believe, on the D-line, and then they have a couple guys they just kept from last season. But we'll see how they do it replacing that. I think their defense doesn't have to be great if they have this phenomenal point scoring offense, but we'll see what happens. They can't really afford to lose games like SMU, like they did last season. Their schedule is pretty easy this year. They really just have Notre Dame, which, if you think about it, doesn't count as an ACC game. So if they lose to Notre Dame and win out, they're making the ACC championship. So, yeah, I think they have potential to go undefeated. Notre Dame's probably, well, not probably. Notre Dame is their hardest game, period, full stop. So we'll see what happens with Miami. Clemson could be a scary game for them if Clemson can pull it together and if Dabo can coach their guys. But, yeah, we'll see what happens. I think, again, it's going to be pretty bad for Miami if they go into Week 10 against Notre Dame with a loss or two. I think they need to go into Week 10 against Notre Dame with undefeated schedule, undefeated record. But we'll see what happens. So, at my number 1 spot, we have Oregon. I don't have a lot to say about Oregon. I think they'll go undefeated in the regular season. I think maybe they'll lose the Big Ten championship, but they'll be undefeated going into that game. I think Dan Lanning is going to put together a good defense. Obviously, he put together good defenses at Georgia before he went to Oregon. Their offense is insane. Great running back committee. They have good receivers. They have Decorian Moore, receiver, who's going to be outstanding this year with Dante Moore. Dante Moore decided to stay at Oregon another year. In my opinion, he might have been able to go number 1 overall in the draft last year. So, obviously, a good quarterback. And then they have great tight ends also. So, their offense is stacked. O-line's good. Defense, as long as Dan Lanning can put together a Dan Lanning defense, I think they're going to be great. So, they have hard games in the Big Ten. It's not easy for sure. It's no Penn State, like I said, for other teams. But as long as they take care of business, they'll go undefeated. They'll make the Big Ten championship. They'll make the playoffs. Probably will get a bye. We'll see what happens. But those are my rankings. That's my Luke Miller college football power rankings. That's the top 20. We'll update these weekly, maybe bi-weekly. I would probably say weekly. But, yeah, pretty crazy season ahead. Maybe the craziest college football season we've had in a while, because you just never know when a team like Indiana is going to come out of nowhere and just win a national championship, go undefeated. So I'm stoked for this season. I'm so ready to wake up on a Saturday and just have my eyes glued to a screen for 13 hours, which sounds awful and sounds super unhealthy, but I don't care because it is awesome and it is the most fun you can do. So, yeah, I'm excited. This is actually a requested video. People have been texting me, calling me, requesting a rankings in person. So here it is. This is my top 20, my power rankings. And, yeah, I'm excited to see how these pan out. I'm excited to update them. So, yeah, email me. My email's on the screen. Text me or DM me. My socials are on here. Follow me on TikTok, Instagram. Subscribe to YouTube. If you're watching this video, you're probably watching it on YouTube. So subscribe, hit a like, comment what you don't agree with. I don't really care. You can argue with the wall. So, yeah, that's all I really got to say about that. We'll see you guys next Tuesday. Yeah, thanks for watching. Goodbye.